Hello, Instagram. We're driving in Iowa right now. This is like a throwback to when I used to do my road trip lives. But we're driving right now from Coralville to Des Moines, Iowa. And what else is there to do when you're driving? We got Corbin out here driving. Yeah. What's good, Rebecca? I don't even know if y'all can see because it's so dark. Oh, put you on glass, Rebecca. There we go. Hello. So we just did a huge swing in Iowa. It's my first time ever visiting Iowa, and pretty amazing. We landed yesterday evening and immediately went to a community called Council Bluffs, where we held the largest Iowa rally of the presidential cycle last night, just a few weeks after holding the largest rally, period, boom, of the overall presidential cycle in Queens. So it's been really big. Corbin, what do you think?
I think the energy's here. Iowa's been fired up. It's like 6,500 people, I think, in 24 hours.
6,000, 6,500 people in 24 hours. Rebecca, what do you think? I should turn your light back on. Wait, you got it?
She knows how to do it. She's technically on.
What are your thoughts, Rebecca?
I think it was amazing. I think Iowans were very welcoming. People, it was great to get to know them. And it was amazing. It was great.
It was awesome. People in Iowa are super nice. Take note, New Yorkers. We could learn a thing or two. Because I would go door knocking in the Bronx and people would be like, I'm not trying to change my religion. I don't want to change my cable company. Get away from my door. And so it took a lot of door knocking to break down people's defenses a little bit. But in Iowa, I went door knocking this morning and people are like looking forward to it. They're like, oh, someone's coming at my door. It was like pretty amazing. It was a totally different culture out here, which is really nice. I'm going to pull up some of the Q&As here. So feel free to send some Q&As. And I'm happy to take a look at them. This one says, how will Senator Sanders' proposal to wipe out student debt work in practice? It says, is it really? But unfortunately, I can't see the rest of the question for some reason. I don't know why. But I think what's really funny is that we spend so much money on projects for billionaires and on tax cuts that we actually don't realize how deeply affordable so many of these programs actually are. So for context, the cost of wiping out all student loan debt in America, public and private, mind you, is about $1.7 trillion. Do you know how much the cost of the GOP tax scam was a few years ago? Like, the completely unnecessarily outrageous tax cuts to billionaires and the top corporations cost us. It cost us $2.1 trillion, and we passed it like that. $2.1 trillion for a billionaire and corporate class that like we didn't even think about it. They like, I don't know if y'all remember the tax scam, but these Republicans were literally writing marginalia in the, on paper and then voting on it. It was that unthought out, and that was about 2.1 trillion that we cost. And what's great about it is that if you just reinstated some of those taxes, it would cover the cost of forgiving all student loan debt in America. We're just not used to government actually working for people like us, that we think it's impossible, but it's actually quite doable. But yeah, I mean, and if government isn't working for the public, then what is it working for? I think me know the answer to that question. Okay, let's see.
How much are you paying for student loans?
How much am I paying in student loans?
Yeah, what do you pay a month?
I have about $20,000 in student loan debt. When I was waitressing, I had set up income-based repayments, so I paid like around 200 something bucks a month. And I had friends that have paid about 1,000 or 1,800 a month in student loan debt.
Not having that change people's life. I mean, people are putting off buying a house, buying cars.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I actually saved the money, or if I could have just saved the money that I spent on student loans, by now I would probably have a down payment for a house, or I'd be able to purchase a car, or I'd be able to start a business, or honestly, like, I'd be able to think about starting a family or having children sooner. But when you're paying a car payment's worth of student loan debt or student loan payment on top of any other payment, like on top of your actual car payment, because that doesn't go away, or your unlimited Metro card doesn't go away, you still need to pay that. You're just paying all this other stuff on top. Look, we've got some people here. Type in how much money in student loan debt you have. Someone says that they have $120,000 in student loan debt, and they pay about $620 a month. This other woman says, I'm an indigenous dollars in debt. Post your student loan debt. I'll read it out so we can all see how ridiculous this problem is and widespread is. Because the thing about debt is that there's a culture around shame of debt, and that does not help us. The fact that okay, we're back. Sorry, everyone. So here's some of the loan debts you guys all have: $10,000, $35,000 in student loan debt, $46,000, $120,000 with undergrad. I pay $1,000 a month, $85,000, $45,000. Do you all understand how deeply wrong this is? How deeply wrong it is to be in this amount of debt to get an education?
It's relatively new, right? I mean, like,
it is new.
4 hours.
$44,000, $20,000. Look at this. $220,000, paying $1,600 a month come January. $192,000. That is wrong. I mean, think about the system that's set up where in order for you to access opportunity in our economy, you have to go into debt.
Starting off.
That's rigged. That's a rigged game if I ever heard of one. That's ridiculous. I'm scared to go back to school because of being in debt. I'm the same way. I graduated with maybe $25,000 or $30,000 in student loan debt, and that was one of the main reasons why I didn't go back to get a graduate education. I always wanted to get a master's or go back to, either study economics or study, get a law degree or public health or anything like that. And one of the main reasons why I never went back to graduate school was because of the cost. Because I knew that it was going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And my mom was a single mom, and I was trying to support myself, and the idea of adding more student loan debt forced me to make a choice to not pursue education further. We have to understand that as a country, when we are actively dissuading the pursuit of an educated workforce in a time when our economy requires higher skill than ever before, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, this is not about an individual issue. This is not about, this is not about this being an individual hardship. This is about setting up our entire economy to fail because we aren't educating our workforce to the level that our economy demands. It's wild. All right, let me see what other questions you all have. Do you have any questions, Corbin?
What was the most exciting part of your trip so far? Most surprising part of your trip, rather?
The most surprising part of my trip? I don't want anyone to be offended, but like I'm actually surprised at how nice Iowans are.
Yeah.
Like it's like surprisingly nice.
You're a New Yorker.
I know, it's like I'm a New Yorker, so whenever I meet people, the default mode is like suspicion. It's like, why are you talking to me? What do you want? What are you trying to hustle me for? That's like the default. It's like how I'm used to people, like, and
That's how
so.
they're not to talk to people on the subway.
Right.
They're like, why are you speaking to me? We're on the subway.
You would try talking to people on the subway?
It's like 7:30 in the morning, man. Stop with whatever.
No. You try
I didn't
talking to
know.
people
I
at
didn't know.
7:30 in the
In
morning?
Tennessee, you were sitting beside somebody, you say, so how's
Oh,
it going?
no.
You don't do that.
No.
The looks.
Oh my God. No.
I learned a lot. I learned that, for example, if you're walking up an escalator, you stay to the right.
Yeah.
If you're going into a place in the winter or the summer, you shut the door quickly behind me. I've learned a lot of things about how to be nice to people.
There you go.
Sort of cultural
It's a different kind of nice. That's the thing. It's like, I actually think New Yorkers are very nice and very kind. It's just a different way of expressing it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a tough love kind of thing. Like,
Hannah, we've got a system. It works. Follow the damn system.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't complicate things. You want to take a picture, go to the side of the sidewalk.
That's it. Exactly.
Love in New York is not slowing anyone else down.
That's it.
That's what love in New
Get
York.
out of the way.
And in Iowa, people are just like really kind and very generous and open-hearted, and it's just a really cool culture. I really like it. It's great. So I really enjoyed it. No one tried to make me eat anything crazy. So no fried butter on this trip or anything like that.
No fairs. I think we hit fairs.
Sometimes I feel like Iowans try to make presidential candidates eat crazy things just to see how far they'll go. Like sometimes I think it's like a prank. It's
How
like,
much do you want?
but will you eat a spider if I dip it in batter? Like, what can I get you to eat?
How much do you love Iowa?
It's
It worked
great.
for Joe Rogan.
What do you
Have
mean?
people eat crazy stuff, right? Wasn't that the whole X Factor?
Oh, Fear Factor.
Fear Factor?
Yeah. But they weren't trying to win a primary on Fear Factor. They're trying to win $100,000 or something like that. Someone said, how do I talk to my conservative parents about the election without spinning it into an argument? I think this is an incredible question, and it's a really important question. The way I tend to think about it is that if you have a conservative loved one or a conservative family member or friend that you're trying to talk to, you need to realize that it's not going to happen in one conversation. Is that this process happens over many, many conversations. And so each individual conversation doesn't have to be confrontational. My go-to strategy is that I genuinely try to learn how people are coming to the conclusions that they're coming to, even if those conclusions are different from mine. And so I ask people questions, not in a defensive way, not like, but what about this or but what about that? But I tend to ask people questions in a frame of, what makes you value this over that? Or why do you believe X, Y, or Z? And then if someone wants to know, I'll say, if I always ask kind of permission before dissenting to somebody. I'll say, if I may, this is just how I see things. but let people, if people walk away from that conversation in the immediate tense, kind of unchanged, that's fine. Like, these are not fights that you need to win. They are multiple conversations that you need to have. And oftentimes, how people change their mind is in the aftermath of a conversation. So you give them a little something to think about, and then they kind of stew on it. And then the next time you talk to that person, they've kind of changed their view a little bit, or they've considered what you said a little bit. And so I think the number one mistake that people make in trying to win over conservative friends or family is like thinking that it's going to happen in one conversation and then turning it into a really frustrating argument that goes nowhere and oftentimes just results in both people sinking in their heels more. So understand that it's a process and it's not an instant. And to come at it with genuine curiosity and care for that person. So that's like my kind of take on it. Corbin, how do you talk? Do you have like conservative friends or family or anything?
Basically, well, I'm from East Tennessee, so I have a lot of both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the thing that I found most useful in talking to people about, you know, whether it's progressive policies or whatever, or at least just explaining, you know, making amends for working for you. Right?
You have to. How many people you have to apologize for working?
A number. I've had to explain why I would do that, right? You know, the local communist or whatever. So is to understand that with most people, at least, the policies they're supporting, the ideas they have, come from a very similar place as far as where they want to end up, right? I mean, most people that are, most of my conservative friends want affordable health care that's high quality. They want a job that pays well. They want, clean water. They like to hunt, so they want to have, conservation or whatever, right? And I think it's about questioning with them the status quo, and then often we come to the same conclusion there, which is that it's not functioning.
I think that's a good point. Is right. That whether you're Republican or Democrat, most people think the jig is up.
Right.
Like most people are like, this is a bunch of bull.
This ain't working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And so, really, given that most Americans agree that our current political setup is a bunch of nonsense, the next step is like, okay, what's your analysis of the nonsense? And that's where people, I think, sometimes like come into disagreements. But
and I think generally, where I'm from, people get scared of government being involved, right? They're like, oh, but anytime the government gets involved in X, Y, or Z, and I'm like, well, we do have roads. How about that, right? You can read, and the government helped that happen. TVA, where we're at, there's the Tennessee Valley Authority, which helped electrify the whole South. That was a government project. We've got lakes. The dams were built largely by the government. And then I think started trying to chip away at this idea that one thing that the government is this other thing.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that I remind people is that it's not like the government. Like, it's actually public power. Yeah. And how we choose to exert public power is what government policy is. But when government gets taken over by a small cadre of special interests, then the government isn't us. And yeah, then it is a bunch of impositions that aren't representative of our interests.
And that's the cost of sitting on the couch on election day, or just going to work on election day and not doing the thing, or whatever, right? And there's so many. What more people, at least in most elections, do than anything is nothing.
That's very true.
Right?
What do you think, Rebecca?
With family, I mean, I have some conservative family.
Yeah, how do you win people over?
So I use a similar tactic.
say, okay, what can we agree on here? What can we agree on there? I think very often people immediately go to what they disagree on, and then they spend an hour talking about how different they are. And you're like, okay, you know, once you find an area of disagreement, move on. Move on. Okay, fine, we disagree there. What else can we find? Like I was canvassing earlier today. I was knocking doors in Beaverdale, Iowa. And this guy comes out from his house in his motorized wheelchair to say hello to me. It was like, I thought it was a profoundly kind and generous gesture. It was like, wow, you came out of your house down this block just to say hello. And guess what? We don't support the same presidential candidate. I didn't spend the whole time harping about that. I said, well, what do you care about? And we spent like 90% of the conversation trying to scope out and discuss and discover what our common ground was. And then I didn't ignore our difference, but he was supporting someone else. And what's cool about Iowa is that in the caucuses, your second choice actually matters. Like who your top 3 candidates are is actually of consequence. In New York City, we recently voted for ranked choice voting for city council elections, and so we'll experience that. Took off. I think it's because like young people grew up and we came of age and we're like, oh wait, like previous generations completely screwed us over, you know. And I think that there's a very real sentiment there because it cuts completely across what the natural instinct of humanity is, which is to leave a better world for your children than you found it. And then we grow up and we come of age and we realize that previous generations decided to screw over our planet and create endless wars and mess up our economy and create a student loan crisis. And when we bring up these things, they say, well, if you just had less avocado toast, you'd be able to afford a mortgage. And there's only so much of that you just like, you know what? We're just going to fix this ourselves. And while I know people are upset about it, I would invite people to try to understand where it comes from.
But then there's like this disdain for, a younger generation wanting to fix these problems too. You know what I mean?
Right, because when we try to fix it by actually like electing progressives,
They tell you how you're going to screw them up.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but I also think it's important to acknowledge that there are elders in our movement that have been fighting for the right thing for a very, very long time. Like, not to be, not all boomers, but there are a lot of people that have been holding down this movement for a very long time that have been ignored for decades. And I mean, hey, like Bernie's a perfect example of that. Like he's been in this mix, holding it down for decades, and his peers weren't listening to him. But he has been holding down this movement since we were kids. And now we're coming of age and picking up a mantle. We're not coming from scratch. We're saying, like, no, we're validating the work that's been done, but that's been ignored for a long time. So,
this is climate change. Scientists have been telling us for how long that this is a problem?
1989 was when the government considered acting on climate change. The year I was born, 1989. And then they did nothing with full information, knowing exactly what's going to happen. That is a betrayal. That is a generational betrayal. And this is something that we are having to reckon with. It's like, and it's intensely frustrating because other generations, like someone who grew up where going to college costs like $2,000 a semester, and they're like, well, I could work my way through school, why can't you? And you're like, yeah, because it's orders of magnitude different.
And you're making the exact same hourly wage.
Yeah. He's like, well, or, there are people who are like, well, college costs me, $500 a semester, and I could pay it off making the equivalent of like $10 an hour. Yeah. And now today, fast forward, people are still making $10 an hour, but
it's because you're eating 40 avocado toast a day.
Yeah, exactly. It's all I ate a graduate degree's worth of avocado toast. That must be what it is, right? That must be like, okay, like can't stop my millennial ways. I ate $30,000 worth of avocados. Like,
so I've got the double chin.
It's really ridiculous. The amount of the way people cast millennials as though these aren't structural problems. All right, I'm taking a look. How far are we out?
We have 3 minutes.
Oh no, 3 minutes. What is Bloomberg's strategy in entering the race this late? I think his strategy is to try to stop his taxes from going up. And he's like, well, maybe in the long run, it'll cost me less to run for president than a 2% wealth tax will cost me. So I think this is like a pure cost-benefit analysis situation.
He definitely got the infrastructure to figure it out.
And clearly he doesn't give a damn about people in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, because he's not campaigning in any of these states. So he's like, I don't care about entire states worth of people. Like, I'm running for president, but don't make any mistake about this. I don't care about this.
I'm not interested in what you want to say.
Right.
I'm going to tell you what you should do.
I'm just going to purchase California.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, and we'll be good. We actually have when people say billionaires should exist or that they shouldn't exist, how about no one should be rich enough where one person can fundamentally alter the American political system on their own. Like, isn't that too much? Like, especially when we have the highest rates of homelessness since the Great Depression. Like, how much is too much? And the people who say billionaires and like there should be no limit are people who are essentially saying there's no such thing as too much. There's no such thing as too much personally hoarded wealth. And I just disagree. I think to the point where you are trying to get where you're trying to get the government to personally construct your own personal helipads while 60,000 people are sleeping on the streets. Like, I think that's too much. I think that's too much for me.
Yeah. Especially when you make your billions and billions of dollars utilizing infrastructure.
That's right.
That was built by the American taxpayers.
That's right. That's
our
right.
roads, our bridges, our internet.
That's exactly right. When you
of
rely on taxpayer handouts to get that $1 billion, when you rely on underpaying workers to make $1 billion, when you rely on just totally crashing the economy and in a way that causes millions of people to go into foreclosure, that, like, nobody earns that. That is just taking advantage of a broken system is or rather gaps of a broken system is how that kind of wealth gets accumulated. So, if we lived in an actually advanced society where every person was clothed, fed, had access to a living wage, and there was a billionaire floating around, I think there would be less moral outrage about it. But the fact that millennials and we're back. The fact that in America, younger generations are now projected to be sicker and have shorter lifespans than previous generations tells me that maybe wealth inequality is bad for us. Like, for our health.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the ascent of billionaires has also been paired with the descent of our life expectancy and the descent of our education system and the descent of our healthcare system. None of that is a coincidence. You get $1 billion, or rather $1 billion gets accumulated through systemically sucking out our system. And compounding, someone said there's also a racial wealth gap. That's exactly right. And compounding on the racial injustices of our past as well, like the wealth gap, like slavery, etc. Like all of that stuff, like we don't operate in a vacuum that is independent of history. We're part of a trajectory. So with that, we got here. We're done. Our little car ride's over. It was great talking to you all. And I'm leaving Iowa tomorrow. We're heading back to DC. We're going to be having public impeachment hearings next week. So